October 2nd Pennington County Commission meeting to order. We'll stand for a moment of silent reflection, and I would encourage you to be mindful of Mike Peterson's family and the pledge led by Sheriff Kevin Tome.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is to review and approve the agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to make a change in any agenda item?
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the consent agenda. It'll be read into the record by Holly Hennis.
Good morning, Commissioners. For public disclosure, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the Board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today, I have placed the following items for your consideration on the consent calendar. Minutes of the regular meeting from September 21st, 2012. Approval of the vouchers in the amount of $195,518.80. To approve a resolution establishing speed zones on all roads within the jurisdiction of the Ranch at Black Gap Road District. To approve the users agreement between Pennington County and the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation in order to conduct background checks. Request for authorization to surplus vehicles and to bid for the 2012 vehicle order from the Sheriff's Office, and to schedule a public hearing on October 16th, 2012 for General Fund Supplement SP 12-024 for the search and rescue budget submitted by the Sheriff's Office.
Is there anyone who wishes to remove any item from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, item 11, Pennington County Service Recognition Awards, and they will be presented by Commissioner Ron Buskerud.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Every year, the Association of County Officials and the Association of County Commissioners give certificates of appreciation for employees of counties that have a certain amount of years in. And we have, I think, about 5 of them here today. First one is certificate of appreciation presented to Janet Saylor, Pennington County Treasurer. Is with respect and appreciation that we recognize your 25 years of dedication, service, and commitment to county government. Awarded the 17th day of September, which is when the convention was. So, Janet.
It's been a pleasure. I enjoy my job. Thank you.
And you do a fine one at that.
And the language on all these is the same, so I won't continue to read them. But the next certificate of appreciation is to Frank Dahlberg from the Pennington County Maintenance Worker for 25 years of service.
He should have to make a speech.
Just thank you much. Appreciate it.
next one, certificate of appreciation to Kathy Bruckner, Pennington County Administrative Assistant 1, for 36 years of service.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next certificate of appreciation to Julie Pearson, Pennington County Auditor, for 35 years of service. She'll give a lot longer speech, I'm sure.
Yes. Just want you to know I've loved my job since the first day I walked in and worked for Helen Doffenbaugh, who will always still be the county auditor. And I've enjoyed all the employees that I've worked with and most of the boards.
And vice versa.
And last but not least, our certificate of appreciation to Michael Daly, Pennington County Sergeant, for 25 years of service.
I want to thank especially Don Holloway and Dwayne Glasgow, who made it all possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron, and congratulations to each of you for your good service and your recognition. Next item is the Pennington County Fairgrounds update. Ron Jeffries.
These are registered sex offenders.
Get over there.
Oh, well.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I also wanted to echo congratulations to the Pennington County's employees for their long years of service. Really, Pennington County is quite fortunate to have people put that kind of dedicated time into the operations of the county. Just wanted to give you an update here about the fairgrounds and activities. Would start out first by just telling you that we had a very successful fair this year. When we measure success, we look at the comments we get from the public, and we also look at coming in ahead of last year and ahead of budget. So it's a very important part for us. Certainly the weather, drought was not as big a hindrance as it might have been, but also the point of having a drought for those 10 days of fair is actually a good thing because we don't want to be rained out. So we had a very good fair. We're very pleased with it, and we should be able to complete our fiscal year September 30th. So we will be ending starting our audit and give you a finished audit report when we complete that, working with Cato Thorstensen. The packet that I passed to you there has a couple of pictures on it. I start out with a picture of a log gate. If you notice that we've had 2 log gates that have been placed on either the east and west side of the north side of the event center, the James Kerstead Event Center. Those were paid for without use of county funds. We actually had those 2 log gates constructed by a private donation from Dan Warren and Warren Window Supply, Dan and Paula Warren, and then also from the Central States Fair Foundation. The plan is to continue that logged gate theme throughout the fairgrounds, both along Campbell Street, set back off of San Francisco Street, and then at the main entrances going into the what we call the fenced area, interior part of the fairgrounds as well. The logs were put together by Timberline, a local contractor here, and really added quite a nice aesthetic appeal. Several nice comments about those as we went forward. The second picture is a picture of a proposed sign along Campbell Street on the fairgrounds property. As you know, the city sign code has been revised recently, and I went back and forth with members of the city asking about what we needed to do to go through the sign process. And quite honestly, there's not a consensus within the city as to whether or not the fairgrounds should come under jurisdiction for this type of request or not. But our board of directors talked it over quite thoroughly and said, we need to come back in and be in compliance with what the city's requiring within the sign code. So what we did, as you're aware, a couple of years ago, the board voted to support removing the 2 billboards, static billboards that were on the fairgrounds property. And this request is to put a sign up that would announce events and activities on the fairgrounds. It's a digital format. I will tell you that the city ordinance has a limitation of a 6x10 sign for square footage of the sign. And this property along San Francisco Street, or along Campbell Street, would allow for nine signs placed along that, in that size. We're not requesting anywhere near that. What we're looking for is a variance to allow one sign in the size of 8 by 14. And part of the question that comes up is why go to a bigger sign? If the sign is a 6 by 10 within city ordinance, why go to a 8 by 14? And the reason primarily is that right at the corner of the fairgrounds at Center Street, we become a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. So rather than put distraction signs, 2 signs to try to get messages through and have people read more than one location, we thought a bigger, quicker message would have less distraction than multiple signs would. You can see that we're carrying that log look throughout, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the digital sign. Oh, and I should mention that that'll be paid for through Central States Fair, Inc. and Central States Fair Foundation funds. It will not include county funds.
So are the logs bug trees?
Well, some of them could be. That yellowing that you see in there comes from the bugs, and they are Black Hills trees. All the logs that went in and those that are proposed to go up are coming from the Black Hills, so they very well could be.
Mr. Chairman, are you coming back here to ask us if you can do this, or are you doing that today, or don't you intend to do it at all?
No, I do think it's important that the county commissioners have input. It's your property, and certainly you have final authority over it. The main thing that'll happen is if you approve an installation of a sign, we will also, it becomes your property as soon as we install it. Because it's not a removable item, in my opinion. So it'll be an improvement to the fairgrounds that you will own, the same as you do the buildings, or any improvements thereof.
So, Ron, when you, I like the log look, but how is the city responding to this second picture? You said there was some confusion as to whether or not they're under jurisdiction, but.
Well, Brad Solon, who enforces the sign ordinance, says, I don't think you're within the jurisdiction of the city to do this. We've never gone over before. But quite honestly, I had a conversation with Joel Lundeen, the city attorney. The Central States Fair Board says, let's not do anything that's going to upset the public. Let's come and get in line, and if the variance is approved, it'll be a sign with a variance. It's an 8 by 14. If it's not approved, then we'll have to look to 6 by 10 and start recalculating whether that would be 2 signs or any variation thereof to, and again, location would be a deal. We're looking at that location. If you get too close to Center Street, you've got people that are trying to read a sign at the same time people are trying to pull out on Center Street, and it's a distraction. So we're looking at moving that closer to that middle portion so you don't impede San Francisco Street entrance, and you don't impede Center Street entrance onto Campbell. But I do agree with Commissioner Buskerud that although it's not county monies, that you should have approval to say, yes, we approve of moving forward with the sign.
In terms of your presentation, are you seeking a position by the board at this point in time relative to the sign? And the question is this something we can take action on today?
I don't think, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
But I would try to solve that, and I'd make a motion that we put this on the agenda in 2 weeks, or the next meeting, to discuss whether the county commission wants to approve a sign request to go to the city.
At that point, I should have more information from the city as to what they're looking for. So that would be perfect.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to place the item of the fairgrounds signage on the October 16th agenda. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I hope that the Journal publishes this on the front page, because we had a lot of very complimentary compliments when we took down the billboards out there. And now we're going to turn around and put a big sign that's worse than the billboards, because it's going to be blinking and show a big message. And that's what we're trying to get rid of in this town. And now we're going to okay another one on our property. And so I hope it's published in the front page of the Journal, so we can get some comments from the public on what they think about having another sign on Campbell Street, just like this.
Any further discussion? Yes.
I think this is different than the billboards in that it's a on-premise advertisement for what's taking place on our property. And I don't think, at least what I've read from the people who are opposed to the billboards, that they've been trying to eliminate on-premise businesses from having a sign out. So I think this is different than the billboards, but
Wow.
good luck with your story.
That may be true, Commissioner, except if you remember, there was a whole big stink about the sign that the city put up on their property advertising their events at the Civic Center.
Any further discussion?
I'm
All in
sure that's
favor of
portion
the
of the, oh,
Excuse me. We do have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
All right,
Motion carried.
and I'm sure that'll be a portion of the discussion when we move before the city.
No doubt.
The next page has, it's a longer sheet, says a draft on it. This is a draft that the board and I are working on for long-range improvements to the fairgrounds. It kind of projects out about 5 years. It's subject to change and subject to move based on availability of funds and other needs as they arise. We were very fortunate this year when the old air conditioning units came off of, I think it was the Juvenile Detention Center. Mike Peterson made those available to the fairgrounds if we had a use for them. We had 2 of those installed prior to the fair, both at the Creative Arts Building and at the Horticulture Building where they have the plant displays. And we're also working on putting some of those into the Soulé. Now, we're not trying to make the Soulé building look like LaCroix Hall or make it any kind of exhibit hall, but certainly there are times during the year that we could use it, in particular during the fair, when you approach that 90 degree, that some additional air conditioning would be a blessing in that facility. But as those items arise, it makes us adjust our budgets. What this draft is intended for is for you to have an opportunity to review it and then give us comments or thoughts or commission input into what the board might consider for long-range improvements to the fairgrounds. The fifth item I had was to just mention that the Black Hills Stock Show, coming up January 25th through February 2nd, some changes have been taking place within the stock show structure. A number of activities that were previously held at the Civic Center will be held at the James Kirstead Event Center this year. And in particular, the Ranch Rodeo, one of the popular events that we host each year on a Tuesday, will take place at the Event Center, as will the North American Sheepdog Trials, and an additional event that's currently, as my staff sits over there waiting, being planned now to finalize the schedule of events at the fairgrounds for the stock show. With that, I would answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Not? Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
And we move to our next agenda item, items from the auditor.
Good morning. KJ Peterson, Chief Deputy Auditor. We have 2 posted supplements this morning. The first one, Supplement 12-22, is a supplement to the John T. Vukurovich budget. This is a grant that comes from the John T. Vukurovich Foundation that we've received for several years now, and they have added an additional $5,000 of funding. Karen Romey is requesting that be supplemented into the budget for 2012. Not quite certain if she'll get that all spent by the end of 2012, so there is a possibility that we will come back with anything that was unspent for 2013.
I make a motion to approve the supplement to the 2012 General Fund John T. Vukurovich budget in the amount of $5,000 from non-budgeted revenues received in this current year.
Is there a second?
second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And
Next
this
item.
second supplement is for the general fund water protection budget, where an additional $5,450 of grant revenue has been approved, and now needs to be supplemented into the 2012 budget for spending authority. And just as a reminder to the board, Brittany had done a presentation earlier in the year. This is specifically related to the training program for the continuing education that will occur here, I believe, sometime later in October, and they'll come back in. It's supported from those fees that they'll pay to attend this certification, which we require for the water protection.
I'd make a motion to approve the supplement to the 2012 General Fund Water Protection Budget in the amount of $5,450 from non-budgeted revenues received in this current year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the general fund water protection budget supplement. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. And Julie will handle item number C.
Thank you.
Good morning, Julie Pearson, Pennington County Auditor. We are back today on our piece of surplus property, and the decisions we need to have set by the board today is to set the sale date. We've picked November 1st as the sale date, which will be held in a room yet to be determined. We're hoping in the commissioner's room. And we need to know if you want to set up an extra advertising budget other than just the small legal notice that we're required to be in the paper. The auctioneer that we've selected will estimate that a $2,300 to $2,500 budget would be good for extra advertising. That cost would come off the price of the sale, so we would be reimbursed that if it sells for more than the $2,300 or $2,500. And did you want to set a minimum?
Okay, those are,
Todd recommends that we have about a month's worth of advertising out there to get the best price for the property.
okay, so each item should have a separate motion, I assume.
Yeah, because then you can have discussion on them.
So let's address the matter of setting sale date first.
Mr. Chair, I move to set the date of sale of this surplus property as November 1st, 2012.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second to set the date of the sale as November 1, 2012. Any discussion? If not, those in favor of that motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Advertising.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to have extra advertising authorized up to $2,300 for this surplus piece of property.
Second.
Motion and a second to set the advertising budget at $2,300. Any discussion?
I think so. I'm not sure.
If no discussion, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. There will be discussion on the next one.
That's fine. It's up to you. And then we need to know if you want to set a minimum bid on the property. It will be sold at a public auction, so, Todd can start anywhere, and there has been interest in the property already from other sources than the two we originally had, so we think it will be a competitive auction. But you never know. Can't promise that.
Well, the historic nature of it by itself, the fact that we've had it since 1917. It'd be
Yes,
selling the courthouse.
it is older than the courthouse.
Okay. Do you want to each one write down what you think the opening bid should be, and then we, no. throw out the high and the low, and
And you don't have to set a minimum at all. You can just let the auction take it.
The problem with not setting that, or with setting the minimum is it seems like we have not always had really good luck with that. There seems to be interest. I don't know. If there's a lot of interest, I think, oh, Todd's got a quick comment there.
Maybe I can interject, yeah. Todd McPherson, McPherson Auction and Realty. The two best words in the auction industry are estate and absolute. Those are the two words that are the call to action that bring people out of the woodwork, that, whether it's personal property or real estate. I would encourage you to go absolute with this. I understand that there is a concern that, will it bring enough? Well, the absolute method will bring people that are interested in the property. It will drive the interest to the point to where the market will allow for what that property is worth today.
Would you explain what absolute is for the public?
Absolute, yes, Julie. Absolute would simply mean that it would absolutely sell for the high bid price on that day, on November 1st, 2012.
So no minimum would be needed.
No minimum would be needed, that's correct.
Mr. Chair.
yes.
Todd, Julie, when we advertise this, are we going out worldwide on the internet and putting this available? Are we going to have internet bidding on it and that kind of thing?
Yes, and that would be the reason for using the commission room, so that we can be hooked into that. But yes, internet bidding. As far as advertising, yes, we'll be not only regionally, locally, but regionally, and then on the internet as well. Now, knowing that we don't want to put ads into the Miami Herald, we trust that people from that area, if there's interest in the Black Hills land from that area, they've probably got somebody here that's watching the papers and have an ear to the rail. But yes, we're going to be prudent, but we're going to be frugal with it, but we're going to be effective with that advertising as well. We're going to get it out to as many people as we possibly can.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mind that idea of an absolute. What happens when we have 12 inches of snow on the 31st of October?
Right, and that is a concern, and that's why at the last meeting that I suggested that we go ahead and proceed along with this, so that we can maybe be ahead of that if that happens. What we would do today, if you folks decide to do this and we've got the green light to go ahead, we'll start advertising as soon as I get back to the office. It'll be on the internet. It'll be on our website. Short of that, I guess if we do have snow, we'll just encourage them to come out with their snowmobiles. That's part of the beauty of that property as well. Those folks that are interested in having it as a recreation property, bring your sleds and let's go in and look at it.
I actually wish it would snow.
Me too. Me too. A good, wet, heavy, white rain would be great, wouldn't it?
Mr. Chair. Yes. Where's the sale going to be held? Have you made up? Is it going to be here or up on the property or?
No, it's not up on the property.
Okay.
I guess I have asked, and of course that, we can certainly work with schedules, but I would like it to be somewhere maybe here in the commission room, as we've done the tax deed sales in the past, or another room or something similar to this within the courthouse complex.
How about the fairgrounds where, and I shouldn't say this, but where they don't have to come through security and
That would be
do all
fine
of
too.
that stuff too?
Sure,
As long as you had internet.
certainly. And I haven't been to the equalization office. Is there any other area in one of the non-secured county spots that, I haven't been in there for so long, I'm not sure of a boardroom large enough. I would anticipate a lot of folks that just interested, but then also a lot of buying interest as well.
I believe Ron Jeffries is back there. Ron, do we have connections for internet into the Fine Arts Building and that kind of thing? Do? Wi-Fi? Okay.
Okay.
I would just share on a personal basis, as an agent of the court, I've been involved in about 3-4 absolute auctions of ranch property and rentals, and they work very well. They are, especially with the kind of coverage that internet provides, you definitely get the buyers and the people that are interested, and I would recommend that myself.
And one other thing I may add to that too is all of our media outlets, obviously with it being a county property, with it being, getting back onto the tax rolls, I know that there will be a good interest, an interest story from news from print, radio, and television, I'm sure. And so we'll catch some extra traction through those venues as well.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to have this sale of property be absolute.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to conduct the sale on the basis of absolute auction. Any further discussion? Anyone? There being no discussion, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. We will get started on it.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you very much.
Item 14, our honored treasurer.
Good morning. I put in your packets a procedure that the treasurer's office is going to start with their mailing of their tax notices in December. I don't want to speak for Shannon. I know Shannon's here, and he is also looking into Wells Fargo also doing his assessment notices that he's going to be mailing out in February. So I guess if you've read the letter, I'll open the floor for questions to you.
Any discussion? Any questions? Is this a procedure that you've used before?
No. We're just starting this, Lindell, this year because of the new postal regulations for the barcoding and the expense to buy the machines and the manpower to do our own mailings. This will be the first year that we've had an outside provider do this.
Shannon, do you have any comments you want to make?
Janet's right. My office is looking at doing the same thing. She did the work on this in dealing with Wells Fargo. It's a good idea. It's to the point where Pennington County can't do it. We certainly couldn't do it in time for her tax bills, and we don't want to deal with postal regulations on this. I've considered these companies in the past. She spent a lot of time with Wells Fargo, got it all figured out, and this is a good idea, and my office will do it. We're planning on it. We still haven't developed the card that we need yet, got all of the information on the card, but we have more time than Janet does. I see no reason not to do this.
Okay, Russ, do you have any input you want to make?
Thank you, Russ Tinsvold, IT Director. I just would add that this is a very good idea. I think if you look at the time saved from both the Treasurer's Department and the IT Department and how that time can be better used for some of your objectives, I just think it makes sense.
Thank you.
And with the proposal, as you will see, Wells Fargo has agreed to lock in these rates for 2 years and waive the $3,000 setup charges.
Good job, Janet.
Yeah, that's a great.
Do you need a motion on this, Janet?
I don't think so. It's just informational. Of course, it's not in my budget for next year because it is going to cost us more money, but I'll save so that I don't have to come back and get any more from you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shannon and Russ. Next item, item 15, Joint Powers Agreement.
Morning, Chairman Peterson, Commission members. Dustin Willett, Emergency Management Director for Rapid City, Pennington County. This item, the Joint Powers Agreement, is a revision of the original Joint Powers Agreement that was in place when I came into this position. If you remember, when that happened, there was no small amount of questions raised by some organizations, and especially from a letter that was presented by the Fire Service Board that raised some concerns about how that Joint Powers Agreement was drafted and some of the language in it. We had several discussions with the Fire Service Board. Myself, I had several discussions with the Fire Service Board, and then we had a meeting where we invited the Fire Service Board to come and reiterate pretty much what was in their letter, and worked together trying to come up with some compromising language. The agreement that you have in front of you is a result of those efforts to find a middle ground that was acceptable to all the parties involved. It's been reviewed and pretty much authored by Jay with State's Attorney's Office. It's been through the legal office on the city side as well, Joel Andine and his staff. So what we have now is it has been through City Council, signed by City Council, so now it awaits your signature. I'd be happy to stand for any questions. I know the President of the Fire Service Board, Dennis Mallow, is here if you have any questions for him or if he'd like to make any statements regarding it.
Do we have any comments or questions? Commissioner Holloway.
Dustin, primarily, this is the same as the other one that we had, only we've changed it to add a representative from the County Fire Service Board, a person that lives in Pennington County.
There are the changes. That's the most substantive change in that is the membership of the Emergency Management Users Board, which includes a member from a volunteer member from the Fire Service Board that resides in Pennington County, I believe, is what that language speaks to. The rest of that document, language was cleaned up. Parts of that document that didn't necessarily pertain to emergency management, but we used a document that was pre-existing from the Emergency Services Communication Board, and so there were some parts of that document that didn't make sense in the emergency management document. So again, going through the legal departments, both with the city and the county, the language was cleaned up, confusing parts were ironed out so that it read easier and that it was more straightforward in what it said. So cleaned up, and the significant substantive change is the fact that there's now it allows for a Fire Service Board volunteer member on the Emergency Management Users Board.
Okay, I'd make a motion to authorize the chairperson's signature to the new joint powers agreement for formation of the Pennington County Area Emergency Management.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any other comments? Not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Next item, Highway Department. Morning.
Morning. Heidi Junge, Pennington County Highway Superintendent. The first item I have is Green Valley Estates. It was continued from last week. You wanted some additional information. I did go to Jay Alderman with some questions on current South Dakota law and how he would interpret them, and I have a page response back. Basically, I'm going to summarize. I see Jay isn't here, but he stated that Ordinance 14, a lot of these approaches were put in prior to Ordinance 14, so Ordinance 14 has no effect in regards to requiring them to install them. There is a South Dakota Law 3124-6 that requires all private landowners to obtain a permit from the proper authority. That law was passed in 1939, but he goes on to state that at that time Pennington County did not have any proper approach permit application or paperwork, and perhaps some of these permissions to put an approach in could have been strictly oral, which we have no record of. But then there's another law, 3124-7, that states that no person can impede drainage or block drainage or dam up water from running. So that law was also passed in 1939, and he said we could have an argument under that law that the landowner's obligated to install a culvert in their approach to make sure the proper drainage is maintained. His final answer was, though, is we never had any guidelines or rules in place prior to Ordinance 14. A lot of these were put in prior to that, and the county could under the one law, go to the landowners and say, you've impeded the drainage and you have to correct it, which would require them to install an approach. The cost of the culverts, basically for all the approaches, is $12,000 is our estimate. I got a quote from the contractor that's currently installing the water line. Depending on the size of the culvert, he quoted $15 per foot for an 18-inch or smaller, and $20 per foot if it's a 24-inch or larger. And we don't, at this time, have any 24 inches that we've identified. So the cost for the contractor to install would be estimated about $14,000. And possibly we may need some gravel or something on some of the approaches when he gets done. So my original thought was we could just furnish the culverts and have the landowners install them. But then we leave the contractor hanging out there, and some of the people will not, probably won't have the money to get it installed, and we'd like to get this done so he can finish his project. So as I think about this, depends how the commissioners want to go. Possibly the county we can hire the contractor. It's under the $25,000 bid limit, so there's no problems with hiring the existing contractor to install the culverts. But we just furnish the culverts, have him install them, send a letter to the landowners, try and draft I'll have Jay help me with it, but draft a letter and say that drainage has been impeded and it's your responsibility to correct it. Pennington County is going to furnish and install the culverts at this time, and we expect reimbursement for the cost of the culvert. And we would allow you till January 1st, 2013 to pay us for the culvert. That's going to open up probably a can of worms. Some people that jump on it and send a check, and others won't. And how we get to the bottom line, we probably won't collect all the money, but we might get part of it back. So that's my thoughts.
Is there any provision, Heine, I know on some enforcement type things that, like the weed control, that if the county has to do or cause to be done weed control, that the billing is put on against the taxes, attached to the taxes?
That question wasn't answered at this time. I mean, the one law says they can't impede drainage, but there's no penalties to it. But I think if it doesn't say if it's a class 1 or a class 2 misdemeanor. Sometimes they're misdemeanor, and you can charge them up to $500, I think, under that scenario. But we never, I don't know if we got into that part. If violation of that law would be some type of misdemeanor.
Actually, my focus was not so much doing it as a fine, but if someone couldn't pay it by the 1st of January, that it could be attached to their taxes and they could pay it as they could.
Jay Alderman with the State's Attorney's Office. On what you're really talking about there, Commissioner Peterson, is an abatement action. And there might be some argument to the authority of the county if drainage, if the approaches are not properly reconstructed to allow for drainage. Water backs up and starts eroding the county highway or neighboring landowners, then you might have a nuisance. And by law, counties can abate nuisances, which means take whatever action and spend whatever money is necessary to correct the nuisance, and then that can be set on as an assessment, as a tax. But I'm not, I would have to look into whether or not you could actually treat non-compliance with this. I guess it'd have to rise to the level of a nuisance, is what I'm thinking. And it may well do that. I mean, you can understand scenarios where if water's backing up onto the county road and eroding it and requiring, that's a public nuisance, or backing up into private landowners' property, and maybe even causing some issues with their approach or their roads. So it may well rise to that level.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Jay, one of the questions that I had was, granted, they didn't need the permit prior to us enacting this ordinance. They would have been, in essence, grandfathered in. But once they tore the approach out and put the approach back, does not our ordinance come into play then?
There were two questions that were asked me last time. One was the question on the grandfathering rights. And then there was a question as to whether state law had any application to this. And so to answer those, on the grandfathered issue, the approaches, as I understand it, there's 29 approaches.
Yes.
And those were constructed prior to the adoption of Ordinance 14.
I have no record, so I can't, I can just look at the dates of when the property was, when a building permit was issued. And a lot of them were, I wouldn't say 100%. Most of them were put in.
To the extent that the best evidence would suggest an approach was constructed prior to the adoption of Ordinance 14, then obviously they're grandfathered in with regard to that ordinance requirement. Mm-hmm. Now your question of, well, they did some dirt work out there to put in a water line and then backfilled. My response, in my opinion, is that would not cause them to lose their grandfathered rights. The reason that I would base that on is that they did nothing to change the approach. They didn't redirect it, they didn't bring it in at a different angle, they didn't widen it, they didn't narrow it. It was a water line went through there that had nothing to do with the construction or use of an approach. So there was nothing they did on the ground factually that changed that. So that's my feeling on the grandfather. However, that's not the end of the question, because state law trumps county ordinance if it's applicable. And the state law that Heine has cited was adopted in 1939, as I understand it, long before any of these approaches were built. So in that regard, to the extent that the state law is applicable, it would control. Two statutes that Heine cited and brought to your attention, one requires you to get a permit from the authority that has maintenance over that road in order to build they call it an entrance, we refer to it as approaches. There was no permit system at that time, as I understand it.
Right.
Because the permit system really came about with the adoption of Ordinance 14, which we've already discussed the timing of that. Nevertheless, state law says you got to get permission, you got to get a permit. So whether they got oral permission from Heine's predecessor at the time, I wouldn't know, he wouldn't know. But regardless, the state law says if you build an approach with permission, the next statute says you have to do it in such a manner that it doesn't interfere or impede with proper drainage. If you build it without permission, you would still need to do that, because that second statute says if you build an approach, whether it's with permission or not, you're subject to the condition of protecting the proper drainage in that area. So the bottom line, long story short, I don't think grandfather's an issue here. I think state law is an issue, and I think there is an arguable obligation on the landowners if they built an approach, or if an approach is presently there's an obligation to do it in such a manner that it doesn't impede drainage. 2 weeks ago when we were discussing this, of course, with our drought, we don't have any current facts, as I understand it, where water's backing up and causing a bunch of problems today or in the last couple of weeks or months. But I understand there has been some historical account of concerns over that, which brings us to this point of something needs to get done, and I think state law supports that.
Probably the other part of that is, of the 20, you said there's 29 driveways. Probably not all 29 of them are impeding the flow of water.
I would have to answer that with 99% of them are, because the road was constructed at an elevation, the ditches were constructed to carry all that water to the main drainage area, which was Anderson Road, a county road, which then that water enters Rapid Creek. So the whole subdivision was designed for proper drainage originally.
Okay.
There was no ponding water, no settling pond or dams or anything constructed, so.
If we sent the letter as you suggested, would we have any legal basis then to try to collect that money, or would it have to go through a small claims, or before it could just be attached to their property?
It'd have to be some kind of civil action, sure.
Yeah.
You know,
Because it's gonna run about $900 on an average, anyway. If you average 29 of them, it's about $900 a piece.
Mr. Chair. Jay, is there a possibility of approaching these 29 people? And I know that's a big question, but try and sign some kind of a contract between the county and the individual for X number of dollars to be paid over a certain amount of time, rather than try to go legal action and start citing ordinances and all of that stuff. That just makes people bow their neck and say, I'm not going to do it.
And I think you're spot on with that generally. It's what Heine's proposed and what you've been considering is very, it's generous and decent of the county to say, you know, it's been there a long time. We have these, the state statute from 1939. Nothing's been done to the present, but let's get it fixed, let's work together. And so what you're suggesting is absolutely appropriate. I think some kind of offer that we'll pay for this if you'll pay for that, and if it comes in the form of a contract, there's nothing wrong with that suggestion as well. Yeah.
Probably what's gonna be a problem for you, though, is how long is that contractor gonna be out there?
It's timing, because he wants to start seeding and finishing up his job, so he's waiting for me to come back to him if he wants us. Yeah, he's ready to seed and dress it all up and move out, so timing is an issue too at this point.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm definitely opposed to spending taxpayer money on private property. In fact, I think it's against the law. If you want to spend it and have some kind of repayment program or upfront the money and have them pay it back, that's fine. We get it done on time. But to go out with taxpayer money and say, we know your driveway's been there a long time, we're going to fix it, I don't think we can do that. Nor should we.
The only thing, the drainage is all located within the 66-foot right-of-way. So it's all on public property.
So that we can go out and build dams on every ditch we want to, and it doesn't matter?
No,
You're going to go out and fix them?
I'm just saying, you said it private property, but it's actually where the approach is and the culvert is all within the public right-of-way.
But the only reason the approach is there is to make access to private property.
Private property, correct.
Which was apparently done at a time when that could be done. We didn't have ordinance 14.
So we did have the state law.
Or we can just walk away, and as the problems show up with a big rain, then we go out and address them one at a time.
And how would you do that? What would you do?
If it rained and water backed up on the neighbor's property and I got a complaint, I would go then to that landowner that created the problem and say, hey, you need to put a culvert in your approach. Would be about the only other remedy I'd have.
And that's where that probably, the support for that would come through the nuisance, claiming that would be a nuisance to either the county or the neighboring landowner. If necessary, we would do it and assess the property accordingly.
And unfortunately, by doing it that way, it will be more expensive to the landowner because it'll be done on an individual basis and there won't be any value for the volume of work.
You would think that we're talking about 29 properties, and how many altogether are there out there?
Oh, there's gotta be close to 200, and this is just one side of the road, because, you know.
And most of them have proper drainage or have culverts that drain.
No, because the side of the road that the water line went on that's tore up is the ones that we tagged right now. We did not tag the opposite side of the road, where there's no work being done, so.
Well,
this
on
is
the,
just
on the side of the road though that the water line is in, are there any approaches that have culverts in them?
Yes, there's some.
So that's what I was intending to get at, is that you would think that, you would like to think that a landowner would look to their left and look to their right and see what a neighbor has done, their part, and they'd be willing to work with the county to do their part as well. It's kind of a simple human gesture, but.
Obviously, we have code enforcement officers because people don't always do that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Well, as I remember, this has been a problem ever since I've been started on the planning commission back in 1990. And they haven't tried to do it intentionally, but they flooded each other out every time it rains. And when the ditches start leaking up on top of the hill and come down, it floods the property. I can remember us building dams to divert water away from people's residences out there. And that's one of the reasons I think that they have a big problem with their septic tanks and drain fields, is because of the amount of water that's being held in that subdivision. And I can distinctly remember of having to fill septic tanks full of water in order to get them to sink, to cover them up, to hold them in the ground. And that's not a good deal. If we can do something about it, then what that is, I'm not sure, but we'd have to do a lot of footwork real quick to get the people on board with it. And I think we should do that if at all possible.
Heidi, have you been receiving any kinds of comments? Do you know, we have,
What a nightmare.
And the other side,
a couple of gentlemen here last
No.
It's not
week
really fair. That changed my opinion. It's not fair to make half of them do it and the other half not.
That's right.
That's not fair.
Well, I just had the one that thought plastic pipe would work, but it's not load rated to carry the loadings of a truck or garbage truck or whatever would have to access it, so. I think the people that understand the drainage realize that it has to be done, but there's a lot of people out there that don't have the money or could care less, so. But we can just leave it like it is and tackle them as they come up.
Well, I think part of it, at least part of the concern that I would have is that we're only addressing half of the people in that area. And so you know, if I'm a guy that doesn't want to have the culvert in my driveway, or don't want to pay the $900 or whatever it is, you know, it's pretty easy to point across the road and say, if you go on the other side of the creek, it's got the same problems. You're not making them people do it. So then do we go address it throughout? You know?
See, the other interesting thing about this chapter is that, and I didn't give that law to Jay, but there's another law that says once we grant them permission to install approach and they install it according to our specifications, now the maintenance or replacement in the future, or the replacement in the future, is a government entity's at their expense, at the government's expense. So the whole key is we give them a permit, they install it the proper way. Any point in the future, it has to be replaced, and the government has to replace it.
So if we didn't have permits back when they put them in, does that then make it our responsibility?
Well, I guess I didn't have Jay research that one, but there is another statute that addresses that, once it's put in properly.
If we didn't have any permits, how could it be put in properly?
Well, that's the whole thing, and it wasn't put in properly because it's impeding drainage, so.
Yeah, you, like you say, it may be, you know, more expensive as time goes on. But since you're bringing up the idea across the road, maybe you wait and address one at a time those issues that are most damaging. If we get a lot of rain and snow melt off, is it going to drain just fine? Or are we going to have issues in some places, not others? And maybe those are the ones you have to address. So you have options.
It strikes me that listening to this conversation and the different factors involved in equity and things of that kind, plus the timing relative to the contractor that's out there doing the water line, that time is our enemy. And this issue is complex enough that I don't think we're going to be able to really develop a foundation for a county policy or position at this time.
So Heidi, do they have a homeowners association that's active?
No, they have a Green Valley Sanitation Water District. They have a district, but no road district or anything that has maintenance responsibilities of the roadway, so.
This seems like maybe, I'm going to agree with Linda. I hate to see the cost increase, but it seems like there needs to be some kind of meeting with the folks. I'm real uncomfortable when we sort of dictate what they're doing. I don't really like that without some response. And
If this had been, if the awareness had been there when they were planning the installation of the water line, and Heidi would have been able to kind of work with them as they go along, we'd be saying different things, I think, at this point in time.
See, and when they sent their plans to us originally, that was our comments, is that as far as the highway department is concerned, they had to clean out the inlet and the outlet and ensure that all the pipes function properly. We just, with the weeds and the grass, I knew there were some driveways that probably had a culvert buried that you couldn't see the inlet or the outlet, but as they went through and put the water line in, no, the inlet and outlet wasn't buried, there just never was one put in, so. Well, you can take care of it real easy and just table it, and we'll see what happens in the future.
What's the wish of the commission?
I'm not sure that tabling it is a good idea, because it seems like there is a bigger problem, and I'm just not sure that what I'm hearing is we're just looking at a little part of the problem, and if you're gonna take care of it, you should look at all of it, and we should maybe be meeting with that sanitation district and saying this is an issue. I recognize you said something to them in your comments, but sometimes those comments don't really connect. And a face-to-face and just saying, this is a problem. And maybe they would all get together and still get, if they all kind of decided to do it, they would still get the benefit of the volume of work being done at one time, one place.
My tenure on the commission has not caused me to come in contact with any of the drainage. Isn't there some kind of a drainage board, or did there used to be? They were collecting that. Heidi's laughing. What's?
I'm laughing because we did have a drainage commission and a drainage board, and it was dissolved, and all the drainage issues were passed on to the highway department. So,
Along with the big bucks that went with it.
and there was no money that went with it. So here's a drainage issue that I'm bringing forth because if there's no drainage commission or drainage board in the county commissioners have to act as the drainage judges or.
Mr. Chair, just to add a little information to your thoughts, when we had the Drainage Commission, the records for the Drainage Commission were being carried around in a shoebox in the trunk of a car. And luckily, we didn't have any problem, but that's where the records were. So I think the people out there and the commission at that time, the planning commission at that time, decided that was not the thing to continue with. And
Well, that's the other thing. I am not, never was involved in it that thoroughly, but you could designate that area as a drainage area, and you could assess fees to correct the problems in that area. But you'd have to set up a drainage district, set a tax assessment, and then those funds could be used to correct all the drainage in that whole development. We have not had a drainage district or area set up since the old, everything else was abolished, but.
Well, and since we made you the drainage
Sorry.
guru, your recommendation is that we do this. And Commissioner Musgrove says we can't spend the money on private ground, but it sounds like it isn't necessarily on private ground, it's on public right-of-way.
Heidi, you got a lot of time anyway, but you're not out there
Yeah.
grading the roads and.
Yeah, that'd be another option. We could pursue the thought of forming a drainage district or area, or I don't know the proper terminology, but once you establish that drainage area. But all those rules and regulations were abolished because I don't know if the commissioners can do that or if that was through a drainage commission that they could set those taxing districts up. I would have to do some research, cannot answer those questions.
We could go back and look at that and present something to you at the next meeting as another option to consider if you'd like to put the matter off for that length of time.
But in the meantime, I think the waterline people need some kind of an answer.
Yeah, either we're going to retain them to do this or we're not, and that's just a phone call and say, no, we're not interested, we're seeking other remedies and let them finish their project. I just need what direction the board wants me to pursue.
What's the wish of the commission?
Mr. Chair, there's so many different options and possibilities that we have not really explored. I'm really uncomfortable making a decision to go ahead with a project when I'm not sure that's the best approach.
Okay, now you were opposed to tabling it, but you're
I believe we need to pursue what's the best.
So how do we, what kind of a motion do we need to do that?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I can make a long-winded one. I'm gonna make a motion that we direct the highway superintendent to notify them that at this time we're not going to do anything about it, but that we set a meeting up as soon as possible, a special meeting with the individuals in the Green Valley Estates area to discuss this issue here at the county commission office and work out a plan for drainage in that area.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Just to
Yes.
try to clarify the motion. So we're gonna have them do it at the county commission office with the commissioners making that decision, or we're gonna have our drainage czar do that?
We don't have a drainage czar. We just got a guy that's collecting the big bucks. It's all from the drainage, but no, it's not, it has to come from the county commissioners that I remember. And I don't think, well, I don't think Heine or anybody can make that decision on their own. And I hate to bring Julie into this, but Julie, do you remember do we still have all the records and everything from that previous drainage districts?
I have a lot of them. I got a file cabinet from them when they dissolved.
Is the car in there too?
A car?
Well, they said it was in the trunk of a car.
Oh, no.
No, I think that.
There was a file cabinet and an old computer, and that was about it. There wasn't too much.
Just to clarify, Ken, really, what you're asking is to have a meeting with the folks who live there to make them aware of the problem, but I don't see
And
how
find a solution.
Yeah, but I don't see how you could vote on a solution at that meeting.
No, I think you
I
can.
wanted to just clarify that. The first meeting would be, this is our problem, and it would be great to have a possible solution.
So if that's the goal, is to meet with those people and try to come up with a workable solution, it seems to me like if you have the county highway superintendent who knows roads, there isn't anybody up here in this commission that knows anything about roads other than how to drive on them. It would seem like having you sit down and meet with those people and then coming back to us with, here's the options that we got, or here's my recommendation, and maybe you could have Jay be a part of that, but to have him come into this board and get 5 of us to try to figure out what we're going to do with drainage out there just seems to me like it's going to be an all-day meeting and come out at the end without a real good solution.
The other question I'd have, do I notify these 29 properties or do I notify the whole subdivision?
Yeah, it has to be everybody.
Yep, I agree.
So do you want, okay, that, there's a cost involved with the stamps and mailing out, and I could mail a postcard out and have a public meeting to discuss drainage issues, and you want it held where?
Well, before you go into that, the people apparently collectively addressed their water problem by going through a procedure to get this water line in and so on. And I talked to one of them, or listened to one of them last night, who was very excited about finally having good water. And that process did not come before the county commission, to my knowledge. And so at a point, if the county roads are not being jeopardized by the situation at this point in time, but neighbors and different individuals are having difficulty, at some point, if they understood the ability to establish a drainage district and the procedure, that at some point they might get sick and tired of it enough to take that step, just like they did with the water line. And at that time, the county positions itself to enable that and foster it to the extent possible and go on from there. I mean, that's the way it looks to me. And
I would certainly be happy to go with Heine wherever this public forum could be, and we could try to work up some options to present. I'm just curious, it sounds like it could potentially be a great number of people, and it's just a forum. It's not a county commission meeting. It's just an opportunity for the members out there to come forward and hear, discuss.
You could have
where could this
fire
be?
hall out there.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to the sanitation district and see where they had their meeting and how they gathered members, and hopefully they have a mailing list too that I could get my hands on, and just send them a postcard and say we're gonna have a meeting and to discuss drainage issues and see what comes out of it and say, here's some options.
Equalization should have those names and addresses, I would presume also.
So maybe we need a substitute motion then to have Heine conduct this here, or this meeting, rather than the county commission.
If you want to
just want to
alter my
amend the
motion, I
motion?
don't have a problem with that, just.
Amend the motion to do that.
And again, I guess Ron Jeffries left, but that's why we have those buildings on the fairgrounds for, to hold those public meetings.
Right, we could use it.
Okay. Karen, are you comfortable with where we are?
Amending the motion?
Yes. And is it okay with the second? Yep. So we have a revised or amended motion and the second approving that. As such, any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Heine and Jay. And
I got another item.
We move on to the next simple project.
Next, simple. Next item is a primary county highway system. Every year I get data from the state of South Dakota that says, here's your total mileage of your primary county highway system. Here's the secondary roads, and it never matches. And for years I've sent letters in and say it doesn't match. We're off 20, 30 miles this way or that way. And I finally got the official database from the state of South Dakota that they use to determine the county primary highway system in Pennington County. And lo and behold, when I got that data, there was a lot of discrepancies between what I consider the county highway system and what the state does. And then I found out within that data, they have a table that states the date of the resolution and when the roadway was officially acted on by the Transportation Commission. And a lot of that data goes back to 1939.
Magic date. Kind of like getting the land back, huh?
So what I discovered was within the city limits of Rapid City and the city limits of Box Elder, we have a little over 47 miles of city streets, urban streets as they're classified. They're still on the official county highway system. Most of those streets were added by the 1939 resolution before the city ever expanded. So my goal is to delete these from the county official county highway system in Pierre, which any change and alteration of the highway system, change or additions has to be done by a resolution, and any deletions have to be published in the paper prior to the county commissioners acting on the resolution. And then also the state of South Dakota classifies roads as arterials, major minor arterials, major minor collectors, and then urban local streets and urban local roads. And these roads should not be on the county primary system. They should be treated as local roads as they're defined by the state of South Dakota. And what they do, they feed residents into major roads that should function as a primary system. So this is a close-up view of the roads, urban local streets that I'd like to reclassify as county secondary roads, and then rural local roads, reclassify them as county secondary roads. And the ones in red, looking at that map, I can't believe anybody in the state classifies them as local rural roads, which they are. They should not be a primary county highway, because the function of a primary county highway is to connect community to community and the major traffic roads into those communities. So this would be the whole list of deletions you have with my letter addresses these roads, and then I'll expand this to show a part of the county. Now, the ones in red are the roads that state is classified as local rural roads. And they shouldn't be on the county primary system. And what this does, they even have this old piece of Highway 1416 prior to the interstate. Evidently, it's on the 1939 resolution. That road's no longer there. There's no road there, absolutely. It's a trail with a bridge that is half fallen down, that the state says it's not their responsibility. And Then there's a couple of these other roads on the 39 resolution that they're local feeders. This would be a main county road coming into the city. This is 1416 over to New Underwood, which doesn't carry the heavy traffic, but once you get to New Underwood, the rest of this road is part of the county primary system. And I do not show the primary system on here at this time. Once we do all the deletions, I'll come back with the overall map showing what our primary system should be. And then we'll get over into the organized townships.
Anyway, you're making that change. When you put them as county secondary roads, taking them from what their current classification is and making them a secondary road, does that change the maintenance? Does that change your responsibility on them?
This changes none of the maintenance at all. All we're doing is reclassifying them and trying to get them to match what the state of South Dakota has determined how they function. And that's our whole goal. We're not deleting any roads, well, except the ones within the city. The ones within the city, we don't maintain them now. So I'm not changing the maintenance level or function at all. This takes us over into the organized townships, and you see all the roads in blue are currently county roads. The ones in green are county roads also. And all I want to do is change the classification of this road from a county primary road, which there's not much traffic on it, and change it to a county aid road. And there's a South Dakota law that allows the commissioners to designate which roads are county aid roads and which roads are primary county roads. It doesn't change the funding or maintenance or anything of these roads within the townships that we'd like to reclassify, and they are classified as rural local roads. They should not be on the county primary system. And that's all I'm trying to do is remove them from the primary system and put them back on as county aid roads. But in order to do that, they have to be deleted and added back. And if you approve my request, I will post this in the newspaper, all the deletions. Then we'll have a public hearing in front of this board. Once they're all deleted, I'll come back with a new map and a new resolution, and it will, hopefully I can get the wording right to say this rescinds all former resolutions. This is the official highway system as adopted this date, and then I will list every road in the county that we currently maintain. And all we're going to change is classifications. So hopefully I could get a motion to set a hearing for 9:30 a.m. October 16th, 2012 regarding revisions to the county highway system.
That would be my motion.
Second.
Discussion on the motion then. Heine, I would, hopefully when you make this posting, that you notify people that it's not going to change the maintenance on that particular road. That would probably alleviate a lot of people coming in worried that we're taking them off the system, so now you're not going to maintain the road anymore.
Yeah, basically, if you read through and I'll post this whole resolution in the paper, and the first one says, whereas roads are classified as rural local roads and urban local roads do not meet the criteria to be on the highway system. And then you have about 2 pages of deletions, and most of that's the ones within the city limits. And then on page 4, be it further resolved that these roads will be deleted from the primary system and added as county secondary roads. You see that top of page 4. And then did I go skip one? Oh, and then page 7, the top of that resolution says, be it further resolved that these roads will be deleted from the primary system and added as county aid roads. So I tried to address that in the resolution, and
The first thing people are gonna think is we're taking them off, and reclassifying them so we don't have to maintain them, and I just think if we let the public know that, then we won't load the commission office or meeting up
Right.
next month with everybody concerned about an issue that's not there.
and I don't know how else to do that, I guess.
Issue a news release.
Oh, okay,
Issue a
yeah, I can
news
issue a
release
news release.
saying that
Yeah.
you're doing all of this, it's gonna be on the agenda, but that it's not changing the maintenance on those roads.
Okay.
And smile good when you're on TV.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, I couldn't believe that they were still using data from 1939. And all that happened in 1939, there was a motion by the county commissioners and says, this is a county highway system as shown on this map. And that map was to be attached. Well, Pier doesn't have the map. They do not have that map. The auditor's office doesn't have the map. So there was no list of roads, no way to define the roads, where they started, where they stopped. I did find a map, I did find a 1938 map in our office that I have, and it's a map dated 1938, and there's a note on it, a handwritten note says this was used for the 1939 resolution. I mean, but it still does not describe the roads or show the roads. And it'd be interesting as you go through, Radar Hill Road used to come south of Box Elder, and then it jogged over a quarter mile and went through the west half of this section, and then it jogged over and went through the east half of this section, and it finally got over to Highway 44. But the current excuse me, current location of that road's on section lines, except where it jogs. So, I mean, even looking at that 39 map, so when you changed all these electronic files, it's nice to know exactly where that at. And as with the new GIS mapping system, it's so easy now to produce a map, and I would just like to get it corrected before, so when the next person that takes over, at least most of the questions are answered. I've been fighting these mapping issues since I started in 1995, and what road's on, what road isn't, and what resolution was passed, and what resolution wasn't passed, and when did this one get rescinded, and I hopefully have one resolution that establishes a county highway system. Every road will be listed, and it will describe to and from. It starts here and ends here. And try to do it on a coordinate type basis where you go north to south, west to east. That's my goal. With that, I'll be quiet.
Appreciate your comments and very well done. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 17. Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Chair and the commissioners, I've had a few telephone calls, and as you saw, I think on the front page of the Rapid City Journal, we talked about with our gravel road system that's having problems because of inability to get out and grade those roads and the financial cost that it would take to run water trucks in front of and possibly behind the road graders to keep from having fires in Pennington County. And so I just brought this to the attention of the commission and the highway superintendent and wonder what, if anything, that we can do about it at the present time. And I know some of the roads are getting really bad. But I'd rather drive on my own position. I'd rather drive on a rough road than I would put out $10 million for fire, so.
Yeah, we even made the front page, had a little article about it, and yeah, I've gotten a lot of calls, and that's our big concern when that fire was first started by a Forest Service motor grader blading the road, and it just sparked on a rock, and it's been so dry that I don't want to put my name on a fire. And Denny informed me earlier this morning that don't mow either. He said, if you start a fire, I'm going to bill you, so. But one question that was asked by somebody, well, you saved a lot of money by not blading these roads. So I took last year's July, August, September cost and compared it to what we've done this year, and we're about 160 hours less blading, which equates to about $10,000. We did go out last Wednesday on Longview Road. It got so bad, and in my opinion, it was dangerous. We took a water truck out and we bladed 3 miles of Longview Road. It took us 2 days with the motor grader, a roller, and a water truck to shape that road up. So instead of a motor grader doing that 3 miles in 1 hour, at 3 miles an hour, we spent 20 hours with 3 people doing it. So we probably ate up about $2,000 versus $80. So we've done Longview Road, we've done, I think, East Slate and Glen and Hill City done and spotted another road where we took water out just to shape it up because it got so bad. So we're doing what we feel is really dangerous. We're trying to address those spot issues. And we had a call this morning, somebody wanted a road bladed. We seen the article in the paper, but we still think we need our road bladed. So I told Ken about it, that I'm getting a lot of complaints and we're not blading roads, and the big reason is we're afraid of starting a fire. So you can drive the roads, they're washboardy, they chatter your teeth and might slop some coffee out of your coffee cup, but they're still drivable. And so we're watching it, and if you want me to do something more, whatever I do, it's going to be blading only. I'm not going to go out and spray water on the shoulder of the road to mow. Doesn't make sense. Hopefully, with the cold weather moving in, there's a 30% chance of rain later this week, and we've been watching that and hoping, and maybe the best thing would be to get a 6-inch snow and wet everything down, and we can go out. And the biggest thing about mowing in the fall is to cut the grass back so it doesn't, when the snow does start blowing, if you have grass a foot high on the edge of the road, the snow across the road will be a foot high. So we try to mow that down so you get that snow to blow across your road. So I don't have a good answer for you. We're trying.
Just in terms of human nature, you take your pickup, you put your four-wheeler in the back, you drive over a county road that's washboardy, then you unload the four-wheeler and tear around the Badlands, and you get back, load it back up, and the only thing you complain about is the road. How's that work?
Well, that's a good example. Yes.
Human nature.
Human nature. There you go.
Mr. Chair. I invited some people here from up in that Hill City, Rochford area. I don't know if some of them are here or not, but may want to speak to that issue. Well, I guess it wasn't important enough to show up, so.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would just encourage Heine to keep doing what you're doing. It sounds like you got a good handle on it. You know, you're the highway superintendent. We should rely on your best judgment.
Well, I had one gentleman tell me that he was driving down the road in his car, in his vehicle, pulling a boat, and he bounced the anchor out of his boat out onto the gravel. And I said, the only thing I can say about that, you ought to slow down about 30 miles an hour. So.
We've come so close, so many times, to having that catastrophic fire. I agree totally with you.
Yep.
The county doesn't want to be responsible.
Right, yeah.
Starting that fire and lots of
And the reason I mentioned Longview is there was a landowner planting winter wheat, and we took the water truck out there and I told the guys, I said, we're gonna water that road, we're gonna blade it, we're gonna get it in shape. And I can't remember who come running in and said, you better look out the window because it looks like there's a fire over there by Longview where you're blading that road. And that was my first thought. Oh no, we started a fire over there. And I think it was 600 and some acres, but it was because the landowner was planting winter wheat and his drill actually started the fire, so.
Yeah, and it went over and
Yeah.
our houses evacuated, and we were so fortunate we were able to stop it.
And my blade operator took off across the field and he was trying to cut a fire line in front of the fire and it outran him. So we tried. We was out there for a while helping with that, so.
I believe I had some information from Denny about this issue. But also he mentioned one, and I think it was in Idaho, it was 320,000 acres. And at that time that he sent me that email, it was $31 million that they'd spent already trying to put that fire out.
So we'll continue doing what we're doing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Heidi. Item 18, a lien release request. Who do we have to address that?
Mr. Chairman, I'll address it. Since it was put on our records on September 7th, and the request to release it was September 18th, I'm going to make a motion to deny it.
Second, third.
Motion and a second to deny the lien release request. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Items from the chair, just a couple of things that come to mind. We have a request from the South Dakota Extension Service State Office that deals with part of the assessment of Tiffany Meyer as a program advisor. The questions are to assess the advisor's communication with the county commission. Is information provided to the commission on a regular basis? If so, in what way? If not, what is lacking? Assess the 4-H advisor's ability to manage the county budget given to the 4-H program. Assess the 4-H advisor's interaction or relationship with the county extension office secretary, and any other additional comments. And the question I have and would appreciate a response from the commission is, since I'm the liaison to the extension board, are you comfortable with Holly and I filling this out, or would you prefer to deal with it as a board in executive session?
I'd like to see you do it.
Is that a motion?
That would be my motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The other thing I'm going to throw out, and this is strictly for something to think about, and this would be for the public and for the commission to think about. As I reflect on the activities of each commission meeting, we do have an issue or an agenda items from the public. And the notation surrounding that particular agenda item says a time for the Pennington County citizens to discuss or express concerns to the commission on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda. So it has served a purpose, and I was contemplating it here lately, and would pose the question to you, and nothing to be settled today, and I'm not seeking discussion on it today, that we eliminate that from the agenda and instead set up a procedure whereby a citizen with concerns can be placed on the agenda. And if the issue is such that they can provide documentation similar to the different issues that we have to deal with, so that the commission is equipped to understand the issue well enough to perhaps make a decision that it may be more satisfying to the public to have their issue dealt with and a decision made at that time. Plus, you would know when you would be, your issue would be addressed, rather than having to wait till the public comment period. Throwing it out for thought, don't want any discussion of it now, but at some point, we may or may not even address it. So with that, we'll move to item 20. And within the scope of that, Mr. Allard is here, and at this point in time, I'm going to recommend as chair to the commission, and the commission will decide this, that since this item is already being litigated and in magistrate court, that we have no business addressing it at this time. That's kind of the way things were legislatively. When a bill came in on an issue that was in court, it was tabled. It was not addressed. So it's in the hands of the commission.
Please. I'll make the motion to table this matter. I don't know if tabling is the right thing to do with it or not, but
The Attorney General gave me till October 16th to come before you and try to resolve this matter. So he brought me back here. He told me to come back here.
well, he does
Now
not.
you're telling me
He
just
does
to
not
go back.
control this county commission. That's my motion, is the table.
Do we,
Oh, Holly says it's postponing indefinitely. That's what we should be using instead of table.
would you wish to reword your motion?
I'm not sure, because depending on what may or may not happen in court, maybe we want to revisit it later on.
If I may, Commissioner, I believe the tabling is typically under Robert's rules where you put an item aside during the session to be brought up later in that same session. We often misuse the term tabling. It's to postpone indefinitely puts it off to 1,000 years from now if you want, until it's brought back up. But tabling under Robert's rules is defined to include just setting something aside on the agenda because you desire to take something else up before it, and then you bring that matter back up later. So I don't think that's what you're wanting to do here is table. You want to postpone indefinitely.
With that comment, do you wish to revise your motion?
No, I don't believe so. I disagree with the tabling explanation, and I don't like the postponing indefinitely. I don't think we should do anything in this board that's indefinite, so I guess I don't want to. I don't have a second, of course.
Died for lack of a second. What you wish.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think I'd like to see a motion made to postpone this until such time that it's settled by the courts, and the issue is taken care of in the courtroom rather than here in the county commission room. After it's over with in the courts, we could bring it up and have a discussion about it, if need be.
So that's your motion.
I don't think I can quite make that, because I put a lot of stuff in there before I made the motion.
Until the motion is seconded,
the
we
motion,
will
not
not
second
discuss
it.
it. Until the motion is seconded. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion is open for discussion.
So point of clarification is that we can discuss it once we have a legal decision by the court. That's what you're heading for. Okay.
At this point in time, since the procedure, the avenue that was chosen was to go to court, it strikes me that has by their choice, has lifted it from the realm of this commission until such time that the court acts. And that there would be no point in this commission interfering with the rendering of the court. So, any further discussion on the motion? Not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, next item is the,
How about a 10-minute break, Mr. Chair?
well, I don't know if the board will agree to it, but if,
That is a motion.
Second.
moved and seconded for a 10-minute break, we'll reconvene at 2 minutes to 11. The commission meeting back to order, and next item is items from planning and zoning and a consent agenda. Dan?
Morning, Dan Jennison, Pennington County Planning Director. The items on the consent calendar are items A, Spring Creek Watershed Management and Project Implementation Plan, approval of payment application for Gail A. Meyer, PC 13-1 in the amount of $2,650.68. Approval is recommended. Item B is a planned unit development review 0408 6S Properties LLC. Approval is recommended. Item C is a road naming of Gordon Collins Road, Marv Matkins. Approval is recommended. Item D is a layout plat 12-34 Parker Properties. Approval is recommended. And item E is a layout plat 12-33 for Nina McBride, and approval is recommended of that.
Thank you, Dan. And as it states on the agenda, anyone wishing to remove any of the items that were stated from the consent agenda?
Hello, I'm Stephanie Strong. I'd like to pull item A, please.
Item A is removed from the agenda.
Thank you.
Any other items? If not, items B, C, D, and E are still on the agenda. Do we have a motion relative to those?
So move, Mr. Chair, to approve those consent agendas as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve items B, C, D, and E under a consented agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carried. We're back to item A. Dan?
Item A is part of the Spring Creek 319 grant, approval of a payment for Gail A. Meyer, and this is to install a pipeline for agricultural purposes to drinking water for livestock, and this is their share to pay part of that 319 grant project.
Any questions or comment from the audience?
I'd make a motion to, oh, she's going to get up. Okay.
Hello, Stephanie Strong. I am going to speak to item A, Spring Creek, and I object to this item. first of all, it's out of the plan. It's not in that plan. And then the second thing is, I object to this whole project because the data that you're using, I look at the project, the 319 project, and the data that you're using came from 2002 and 2003. Do you guys have any other data that you're going by?
Okay, Dan, do you want to make any comments?
The project, I believe, was TMDL, where it indicated the the Spring Creek was not meeting those requirements, and that's how this project was put into place. I am not real familiar with where the data actually came from. I could get Brittany over here, and she could discuss this a lot more clear than I could. So I will actually go get it.
Well, I object that you don't know the data. You know where the data came from. Who put out the plans that your office reviewed for the data that came from 2002 and 2003?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think they need to address their questions to the board and not to staff.
Okay,
All right?
okay.
I was wondering if I could say something. I'm
You
kind of new to
identify
this.
yourself, please.
My name's Curtis Strong,
Here, Kurt, right here.
and I'm a little bit behind on this, but some people brought it to me to look at. I deal with a lot of water, and the data in here doesn't support the conclusions. You know, it was, all the data comes from 2002, 2003, and then they moved it past, and I think the data was probably correct at the time, but Hill City was a lagoon, and now is a wastewater treatment plant. So I think the data isn't anywhere close to where it is today. I think they've cleaned up the problem a long time ago. And it just continues with the wrong data. So I'm thinking it's kind of, the money wasted really needs to be looked at. So I know it's in segments, and the segment's coming close to an end. There's gonna be another segment, and maybe take another look at this before we just keep implementing something that, you know, the data, the conclusions are poor at best.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
are we talking specifically about item A, which is the payment to Gail Mayer?
Well, it's all the same. It just keeps going and going, and it's based on this report.
Okay.
And the report is poor. The conclusions are wrong.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly where this information is coming from, but I know that the EPA and the DNR and the committee that's formed to approve this has been approving these all along, and the DNR and the EPA apparently didn't have any problems with anything that's being done in this 319 program.
I did see the
So
letter.
I just wondered what the situation was and who was bringing this to your attention, what the reason was that, okay, go ahead.
I did see the letter from the EPA, and all it did was say that they agree with what the findings were in here. It didn't have anything, didn't put anything out of how they found it, why they found it, and if you're using 10-year-old data to do much of anything, I don't know how much it applies. And so, because they were looking for phosphonates back when they did this, you know, we've really cleaned up our act as far as cleaners and phosphonates and all of that. So that's what they were really studying when they did this study, but they also checked for the fecal matter and why they were doing it. And it seemed to peak every August during this summer for the tourist season in Hill City, which with the lagoon would make sense. But like I said, the wastewater treatment plant, 2007, was put in, and I think it's cleaned up, but now we're going after things that aren't there for whatever reason. I guess I haven't figured it out. If you want to fund something just to do it, I guess that's great. But it seems to me that it needs a little more looking into just to keep throwing money at it.
In terms of your interest on this agenda item, do you wish us to deny payment or?
It seems to be out of the scope of the project.
On what basis?
It's not in the area in the map. It's a little off. So that takes it a little bit out of the project. So it's kind of an iffy thing. And I don't know everything. I don't know why it was formed or who did it or how it was requested and how it was approved. But when it's out of the scope of the project a little bit, it should be looked at maybe a little closer.
And I think the EPA did that, the DNR. And the last word that I heard from them is that they had no problem with the property that was being brought into this 319 project.
Okay, I have not seen that letter.
So I don't know.
I think I might be the oldest guy in here, but and my memory's pretty good. But years ago, when Walter Taylor was a county commissioner, and I think it was about 1962 or 3, they were fussing about the pollution and the sediment in Sheridan Lake at that time.
Yeah, I have that study here. It was done in 1960.
And Mr. Taylor used to, besides being a county commissioner, managed the Harney Peak Hereford Ranch that had grazing permits in the Sheridan Lake area. And he was they were building Sheridan Lake at the time. And the McVeigh burn occurred during that period of time also. And after the burn, there was a very heavy rain. And of course, then we didn't have those little rolls of straw that we put out nowadays to stop sediment. And he told me that as he rode up on the hill and looked down in Sheridan Lake, or what would be Sheridan Lake, the dirt work people normally parked their equipment up on a plateau. They left it in the bottom of the lake the night before the rain, and he said all that was sticking out of the sediment that was in there was the smokestacks on the caterpillars. So he said, if you want to know how a lot of that sediment got into Sheridan Lake, that's when a good share of it got in there. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with the human pollution and all that, but this is not a new issue. I think some things are happening up there, Mitchell Lake, some of those things that were nothing but swamps, people appreciate. But in terms of this agenda item, if you have anything particular to say about that, please do, because we need to address it. And if you don't, I would entertain a motion.
I've said all I was going to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Stephanie Strong again. I have a little more to say here.
Relative to the issue.
To the issue.
Item A.
To the item A, yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, Stephanie Strong. As Kurt had said, the data is old, and you're basing the payment on something that's old data, and that makes the data really junk science. And what we got to look at is, this is all so much guesswork here, and when's it stop? And, when you get government in there to have a one-size-fits-all for projects, that doesn't work in the local areas. It doesn't address the people's rights to their property when you infringe on their water rights. By changing the meaning of the water rights, and you're implementing what's called a best management practices, and that comes right out of the United Nations Agenda 21, which is you're having foreign governments run our water system, and I object to item 21A. And again, when you had Hill City come online with the water treatment plant, their first studies were coming in at 2007 into Spring Creek, and then the tourists, that's where your spikes were in your plan there, and those things have been addressed. So I object to the project. Campbell County objected to the project, and they didn't accept it because people with their private rights have the better solutions than something coming from the United Nations foreign government.
Mr. Chairman, I don't remember a thing that's involved in this that said to anybody that you will be part of this program. Every one of these people that we're dealing with are volunteers that came forward and said, I'd like to do something to help clean up my property. And so that's where all of these individuals, including this one, are coming from. There's no mandate by the county, by the EPA, by the state, anybody, to say you will be part of this. This is all a volunteer situation.
I disagree with that, too. There are EPA mandates. That's where this is coming from. It's infringing on our water rights, our land rights, with your nuisance laws. That's right into our property rights and the takings clause and article.
But as it relates to our project that we're working on here, we haven't forced anybody into it.
The EPA regulations have.
And we so far have not been able to amend any EPA laws at the county level. So again, this discussion does not pertain specifically to the issue on the agenda. And the question is, do we or do we not authorize payment for Gail Meyer?
Again, it does address 21A, and it goes to the EPA. You're getting federal money, and there's certain things that you have to, and which involves you as a county, and then involves us as citizens, that we're required to go by those laws to get the money. And that brings up another thing. You have one company, Respect, getting the project and making however much money, and no one else is going to bid on it. I object to that, too. Where do they get their data, and what professionals were used in order to come up with that planning? So I object, again, that you don't know anything about.
Your objection is noted. And from this point forward, the only thing we will hear is why or if Gail Meyer should not be paid. And if you have no comments to that regard, then the discussion is closed.
I do have a comment to that. Gail Meyer should not be paid. She's out of the project area. The project shouldn't even exist because it's based on junk science. It should be debunked.
You're repeating yourself. We have closed discussion, and the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the payment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Third.
Then, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Of Dan or Brittany. It's been stated here that this project is outside of the area. Can you guys address that? I mean, is that a valid concern?
This project is located along Horse Creek. Horse Creek drains into Sheridan Lake. In our segment submission, it said that it would include anything to the dam. In speaking with DENR, since Horse Creek drains into Sheridan Lake and the project goes to the dam, that they consider it valid.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question too, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
I don't see where anything that's been brought up by the opposition has anything to do with this particular payment, because this person relied on what junk science, which is really a mislabeled term and very inappropriate, because in 2002 it probably was correct. But and so I'll definitely vote for the payment here. However, I do want to ask. The one gentleman said something that made sense to me, was with the change in Hill City's lagoon system, how does that affect what we're doing downstream? And do we need another study down there? And how much would that cost and take more time, I suspect, but I'm not sure that he's not correct that we do need another study based on what's happened in Hill City.
We are monitoring it as part of the program, and we have been since the
Yeah, you better explain that so everybody can hear you.
As part of the program, we have a monitoring program included, and we do sample from the Boy Scout Ranch up off Medicine Mountain all the way down to Sheridan Lake. So that area is included. We've monitored every year. We're in our third year of monitoring right now. So that would be included. We would see.
And does there come a time then when you're monitoring and you say, okay, that's enough, we've done enough? We don't have to spend the rest of the money? Or are we going to be, just because we got the money, we're going to spend it?
Well, the past 2 years were really wet years. This is a dry year, so the data's changed significantly from the past 2 years to this year. So it just, it depends, a lot of it on rainfall, on these BMPs that are implemented, the wastewater plant that was improved. There's some Mitchell Lake construction and dredging that could happen, that may change. So there's lots of different things that happen that would change the data, and that's what we track to see, if they do things here, how does that change?
Okay, so we are keeping up with the monitoring and whether this is all necessary or not.
Yes.
Okay.
And did we originally use the 2002, 2003 study as part of our basis for proceeding forward with this?
When the state wrote the TMDL, they did base it on that information, yes. And that's pretty typical of any of these kinds of programs. There was a certain amount of funding that was in. They did the study. DENR was involved. The School of Mines was involved. And then they base the TMDLs and list it based upon that information.
And when did we start this whole process?
2009, I believe.
2009. So it was 6 years old when we started it, this study. If it was 2003.
Yes.
And who did the study back in 2002?
Dr. Kenner and Bob Smith with DENR.
So DENR and School of Mines.
Yes.
And so would you classify, that is junk science, isn't it?
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we have another commenter.
I wasn't going to say anything, but Commissioner Busker brought up a couple of points today.
You are?
I'm George Farabee. Early on, Commissioner Busker had said something about not spending taxpayer money on private ground, and I'll vote for you. I'll campaign for you. You're right on. Unfortunately, that's probably not a true statement, but it should be a true statement. And this is a classic case. We're spending taxpayer dollars on private property, not for livestock, for horses. I know they're in most of our vocabularies, horses are livestock, but they don't qualify for ag. So from that standpoint, they're not even livestock. I just spent $1,000 replacing a water pump for livestock, and my household as well. Didn't ask for help, didn't want any help. We're going to give this gal close to $3,000 to build a water line, and I don't know all the details because we haven't been able to get the contract to look at it. From what I understand, we're building a water line for this gal to water a couple of horses, and we're probably giving her a frost-free water tank as well. And I don't know, Lindell knows more about these things than I do. I just chop ice. I don't have one of those frost-free waterers. But we're paying her $2,600. That's all taxpayer money. And I'm guessing that when Ron said taxpayer money, he meant all taxpayer, not just federal taxpayer money. Or not, excuse me, not just county money. Out here at Rapid Valley, you're talking about county, state, federal, all taxpayer money. So what are we doing? Second point, also tribute to Commissioner Buskerud. This TMDL was done in mostly 2002 to 2003. This is the one that found the pigs. You recall that? The TMDL. The predominant animal source on Palmer Creek, which feeds into Spring Creek, was pig. The predominant animal source on Spring Creek was dog. Is that junk science or is that junk science? It's sure not science. Today, to address your point, Ron, I don't believe there's any evidence that there's any contamination problems with Spring Creek that man can correct without getting rid of all the cows. When it rains, if it ever rains again, all the cow manure, and there's thousands and thousands of cows in that watershed, and elk and deer and turkey and on and on. That waste will wash in to the drainage areas. So during those times, will the samples exceed the EPA limits? Certainly. The only way to avoid that is to get rid of the animals. That's probably not going to happen very soon. Day to day, there's no doubt that the problem with Hill City's sewer plant, now online, has taken care of the problem that was detected. There's no doubt in my mind that Scott Kenner and Aaron Larson, it wasn't Bob Smith, the TMDL, front page, prepared by Dr. Scott Kenner and Aaron M. Larson from DNR. And immersion recreation, 31 miles. And by the way, before I forget, the only official document that I know, and I don't care what somebody says, it's what somebody writes and signs, should be controlling. And what this says is the project area, the 303D, that's their fancy words, listed segment ends where Spring Creek empties into Sheridan Lake. Now, I know of no other document that says this. So lacking or absent another document, this document controls. This was a 2008 document. When I talked to the guy from EPA that reviewed this document, he said he had to send it back to Scott Kenner to redo. It was so sloppy. This product is beyond sloppy. But EPA went ahead and approved it. 15 pages attached to this thing is the EPA approval. And when I asked the guy that did the work, he didn't sign it, some gal above him signed it. But he did the work for the South Dakota area. I said, you ever been to the Black Hills? No. There aren't pigs in the Black Hills? Science. One other thing. We've got the fox guarding the chicken house. Respec is in this thing. Most of the money goes in Respec's pocket. Half to 2/3 of every dollar goes in Respec's pocket. The CEO of Respec, the president of Respec, the head of Respec is Scott Kenner's brother. Does that tell you anything? We hired a person, the county did, for this project. Do you suppose there needs to be a watchdog? You suppose this project needs a watchdog? Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion?
I'd like to say something, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, Dan. I didn't see you.
Dan Richer, I'm not opposed to paying it because you guys have already approved to let her do this project. So she's spent her money to do the project on your approval. As I said in the last meeting, I think you are not being given the correct information. Horse Creek does not enter into Spring Creek, and no documentation says any place that I can find. All of it says Spring Creek, this project ends where Spring Creek enters into Sheridan Lake. Horse Creek does not. It drains directly into Sheridan Lake. And the only one I could find is this document here that is a TMDL on Horse Creek. And it is monitored by Butte County, not Pennington County. So, like I said, I'm not opposed. You guys already gave her approval to spend her money, and she did that. So, but I think you're not giving the correct information on all these projects.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Committee reports.
Yes, Mr. Chair. A couple items from myself, but the Environmental Protection Agency called a meeting in Hill City last week, and DNR and myself and our planning department and things were there, the city of Hill City, and discussed the 319 program, and also toured some of the area that we had involved in the 319 program. And I haven't heard anything from them that said that anything was wrong, but the information that I got back, I thought that was being a good job was being done with this 319 project in the Spring Creek area. And as well as the DNR basically said the same. So I'm not sure exactly, but I don't have any problem looking at any of this to see if there's some problems there. And I think maybe we should do that, but let go with that.
Anything else?
I have nothing, sir.
I have nothing.
Nor do I. Next item, items from the public. Does anyone wish to address the commission?
David Olson. I just want to commend the contractor out in Green Valley Sanitation District for the great work he's done. Anderson Ditch has never, or Anderson Road on the west side has never looked so good. I think he's done a tremendous job. I've worked as an inspector, and I've never seen a contractor do work like this. And 30 years with Bob Bell and doing my own work and inspecting for other telephone companies. Why I've, when you run some heavy equipment over the ground and leaves a mark, these guys have done a tremendous job. And I'd like to commend Heine and county for the snow removal and the good work they do. I don't think they always get to hear that, and it'd been nice I could have told Heine that himself. But you guys can relay the message where I think I live on South Side, and I think they do a tremendous job for school routes and that. The real reason that's part of the real reason I'm here is to commend them. But then I went down yesterday to commend the guys on cleaning up the yard. They've got their containers on my lot. It's kind of down in a lower area. It was created because of the highway or the road that went north. When I developed this, I had to move the road way to the west because the intersections didn't line up. You guys know all about why that was created, left a void, and I haven't got all the rock out of it yet, so I've been kind of about disking it, knocking the weeds down and stuff like that for the last couple of years. The Green Valley Sanitation District identified 4 areas that they could put stuff. One was mine, and Dale, the owner of Highmark, wanted to use mine because of the way it is. They could come out on the south side real easy, whether they're in the lot or on my driveway or where, because of the lay of the land. There's no ditch there. The drainage lays to the south. I'm going to say probably 100 foot in on the property. And I'd like, and they told me the project was stopped because of, or they were picking up and moving because they needed a conditional use permit. And I guess I come to address that issue. I'd like the stuff left there because my grandkids ride the buses, and the more stuff that's in that lot's not on the road, the less equipment and stuff. They can park their trucks there. They dump their gravel in there that they're using, and they've had a lot of their plumbing stuff. The pipe and stuff has been there out of the area. And so I'd like to ask county commissioners to waive that for 45 days till the project's finished. And yes, I am excited about clean safe, good water. And that Green Valley Sanitation, remember, those that are old enough, there's a couple of us, that was created because of the flood. That was all developed so that they could put their HUD trailers out there for those that were displaced in the 72 flood. But, and I guess that's all the comments I have. It just, I'd like them to be able to leave that there for 45 days. Thank you, without having to pay the $1,100. Your turn.
I just appreciate your comments, Mr. Olson, and just a reminder that the situation with public comments is we cannot take action on it today. And so if there's another way to deal with that through the Planning and Zoning Department or otherwise, can that be pursued? And Dan's nodding his head. I'm not sure that means yes or he's thinking about it. But
Well, what we've been told is that they're relocating basically the contractor's storage yard to some other place. We have not heard where it is, but they were issued a stop work order because they were not meeting the construction permit requirements, silt fences, drainage, storage of equipment, dirt piles were on the highway. There was just a number of things. And the DENR actually went out with us, and they're the ones that more or less indicated that they were not meeting those requirements. And we issued the stop work order in order for them to correct all those violations.
Mr. Chair.
And one of those included the conditional use permit for this contractor's basically storage area temporary.
Who issued the stop work order?
We did.
Through the state's attorney's office or?
No, through our office.
Just through your office, okay.
And they're aware, they are actually working on all those issues that they need to correct as we speak, getting those corrected.
okay. Is what's being done such that they can proceed with the work?
If they get all those issues corrected, yes, they can proceed.
Without
Conditional use permit? Yeah, if they do not use this as a base area, they can proceed. If they use it as a base area, they do need the conditional use permit.
We're not gonna use it as a base area.
Yes, yes, sir.
I have a question. Is there a time limit?
Can you come up to the podium, please?
I would like to address the board. Is there a time limit?
Your name?
William Mueller. Is there a time limit on the stop order?
Well, until they correct all the violations, they cannot proceed.
So it could be indefinite?
If they do not correct all the violations, yeah.
And are you the person that, or are you the department that makes the judgment on whether they correct them or not?
Yes, we would be.
Thank you.
Okay. You will just be at ease here for a moment.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd make a motion to put this item on the next planning commission agenda for discussion. And until such time, getting more information about this.
Are we in the ballpark, Holly? Says no action.
Yeah, it's not, we didn't notice anything. I would say a motion's not in order. We'll just do it as a new motion going forward.
Are you comfortable with that?
It would be like any agenda item that we put on, and you don't need an official action.
Okay. I don't have any problem as long as it gets on there for the planning commission to discuss.
We have the commitment that that will be done on the next agenda. And are we okay?
What meeting would that be?
No, because to me, government moves too slow. There's a lot of money involved, and, if they could get to the next block, I can get hooked on for water. So I got selfish items. The only, I realize what Dan is up against, and yes, there's those ideas, but I guess doesn't Green Valley Sanitation District, do they have any control of anything? Shouldn't they be able to identify spots that would give us the right to put stuff there for a little while? Until this project is done, you gotta have areas that you're gonna store stuff. And to me, they've been stringing it out on, a Reservoir Road. Well, now they're subject to theft, they're subject to, vandalism on their material, where it was in a yard, there's residents around that have a little more of an idea, where it is. I understand what you guys got to do. You're bound probably by laws. I guess I ask you to hey, let's let this go for 45 days so they can get done and we get on with life. And we aren't talking about snowballs out on the road when they're still doing it. I think for what they've had to fight when it comes to telephone, all the utilities, cable TV, and all this, these guys have done a tremendous job in being able to do that. I believe the contract is up next August, is when they were supposed to have it done. If we could work with them for another 45 days, I believe they'll have this whole project done, and our roads will be fixed up, and we're not having that construction there. That's all I'm asking. You guys are the ones that have to make the decisions on what's right, what's wrong. I'm just down here. I called Dale this morning. I said, I'm not going down and cause trouble for anybody. I'm just asking that we let us get that project done. And is it subside some rules? Yes, it is. But I guess sometimes, common sense sometimes subsidizes those. And you guys have been commissioners, some of you for a long time, and realize that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make a statement about that. And yes, you're exactly right, Mr. Olson. Sometimes I would really like to make that motion to take care of this exact item what you're talking about. But according to state statutes, we can't do that. And then every time we come anywhere close to messing up or doing anything that's wrong or having an illegal meeting or illegal items on or adding something to the agenda, we always get chastised for it. And I don't think in this case we need to get chastised for it. I think it needs to go to the planning commission, and then we can be taken care of from there. And if it has to go to our October 16th meeting, I think that's what it needs to be.
I would just like to add that I appreciated your comments, complimentary comments about the highway department and the contractor. Dan?
Just one comment, we are meeting with them tomorrow, the contractors, and they may have all their issues corrected by then. So if that's the case, they can continue working.
What time and where are you going to meet them?
What time? At 11 o'clock tomorrow.
Where at?
I'm not sure Randy had set it up. It's out there on site. I do know it's on site.
Would you find that out and let Holly know so she can inform us?
Sure.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Any other public comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I make
sir.
a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I would just simply point out that item 24, the executive session, the issue relative to Tiffany Meyer's evaluation was taken care of. That would have been item B. And Holly informs us that we have no contractual litigation, so that item will not be dealt with. And the motion to adjourn in a second prevails if it passes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.